Today I had the opportunity to contribute a little bit to a couple of different articles about the shadow bonus. And so I'd like to just explain the methodology for those interested in how I collected this data and what it means. So the first article is the sylph.gg shadow Pokemon, how much do they matter? You can find that at sylph.gg/updates/shadow over Great League, all with dashes here. Or you can just go to sylph.gg and it should be the top article listed, as long as you're seeing this video within a relatively recent time frame. So essentially, a few days ago, Niantic said that, and put into the code, that Pokemon that remain as Shadow get a 20% attack boost, but suffer around 17% defensive debuff. And so, really, the questions that we're trying to answer here are these three. Which Pokemon should you use as Shadow Pokemon? Will the arena permit or ban Shadow Pokemon in tournament play? This one answered here, generally yes. These Pokemon are going to be permitted, and why do some Pokemon benefit more from the Shadow bonus than others? So I'm really gonna be going over the first and third question there, because that's the ones that most directly relate to my data. So these graphs here were produced by me, and I will explain the methodology of how you get each of these graphs and tables and what they mean for your particular usage, as well as I'm going to go a little bit into this function and correlation here and how we arrived at that and what that could mean. All right, so the second article, I forgot to mention, was JRE's Shadow over Toxicum. So towards the beginning here, I mentioned who all worked on this. I had the wonderful opportunity to work with JRE. He's the guy that does the Nifty or Thrifty articles, as well as several other wonderful articles on the Sylph Arena subreddit, as well as Matt, who is, of course, the creator of PvPoke. And then there's me, Ian. There's some kind words said there. You may know me as PV Pisistratus or Pisistratus. Same guy, one and the same. Sylph.Pisistratus. That is me. All right. So into this article. Right. So Jerry, one of the contributors on that, also wrote a larger analysis of the Shadow Pokemon not in the top 5 that still might contribute to the meta. So each of these also has attached a similar chart. And so yeah, very in-depth there, really informative article. I encourage you to read both of these articles if you've got time. Definitely some really good information there, particularly as it relates to both the Toxic Cup and the Open Great League meta with this original article. Yeah, so getting into the methodology here, how do you produce these graphs? Well, essentially, we take two multi-battles of both the regular Pokemon and its Shadow variant, and we just save these. I give them names of Mon 1 and Mon 2 so I can just compare them really quickly. If we save these, again, a lot of these are going to be the default numbers here. I encourage you to change those around and see how that changes things. But for now, I'm just sticking with one shield versus one shield with the original IVs, default level cap, and baiting shield with low energy moves. And so we read those in, and then the first thing we can compare is this histogram. This is very similar to the histograms you can obtain at pvpoke.com as well. I just was including these here just as a macroscopic comparison. So here we can see that it's pretty balanced. You get some more wins and more losses on either side. And then So that the changes here aren't huge, and even in the macroscopic summary stats, such as the number of wins, the difference is really quite small. But if we look at this graph, I think it's fairly obvious that the shadow Pokemon really change things. It's just that these changes have a lot of trade-offs. So this is not the same line from shadow and non-shadow Pokemon. There's a wide variation. So this is essentially, we just took that data and we sorted it via the non-shadow ranking here. And we compare that to its shadow variation. And so that each thing on the x-axis is the same Pokemon. And so if the orange is below the blue line, it is worse as shadow against that particular Pokemon. If it's above the blue line, it's better as shadow. And then this green line here is just the win-loss. That's at 500, the battle ranking, as defined by PvPoke. And so this blue line intersects that green line at the point in which we start going from wins for the non-shadow Pokemon to losses for the non-shadow Pokemon. And so all of these orange points that dip below the green line before this intersects are new losses for Golbat, whereas all of these points that go above the green line to the right of this intersection, those are new wins for Golbat. And so a really important question, I think, is which Pokemon are those, and how much do they matter? So for that, we just make this table. Essentially, we're finding wins and losses, a little string manipulation here to get the rankings from the JSON file that you can find at GitHub, on PvPoke's GitHub. But essentially, we put our wins and losses in one table and sort them individually by rank. And so, I don't think this is actually Golbat. I forget which Pokemon this is. But the general method applies here. And so the top ranked win that it wins newly is Staraptor, and the top ranked loss that it loses newly is Alolan Muck in this particular Pokemon. And so that's just the general method as to how we can compare the shadow and non-shadow Pokemon. And so these three components make up each of those images. So that's just a brief overview of what all of that data means. I'm going to talk a little bit, just very briefly, about this last section here, which is trying to extrapolate some form of general idea as to which Pokemon perform better as shadow. Now this is the macroscopic summary stat of the number of wins gained, or in these cases lost. You can see this swings really wide from below 20 or more than 20 new losses to more than 20 new wins. And this is in the open meta. So things are changing pretty rapidly. But again, these macroscopic summary stats don't represent all of the trade-offs involved. And so an individual look at the data shows that the shadow Pokemon and their non-shadow Pokemon and non-shadow variants tend to be roughly similar. There's not much of a benefit, but in certain situations it could be possible. And so how do we arrive at this formula here? Well, first of all, this is all empirically derived. So basically that means there's no theoretical understanding as to why this equation is the way it is. We can infer some things from this, but this didn't come from theory. It came from this data itself. And second of all, it's not a perfect correlation here, as you can see, but this is much closer than any of the individual stats that I have compared. So yeah, so what is this data? So we take and how do we get it? So here's the name of the Pokemon, its swing, fast move damage per turn, fast move energy per turn, lowest energy charge move energy, lowest energy charge move damage, highest energy charge move energy, and highest energy charge move damage, as well as the maximum attack and maximum defense possible for a Pokemon within the Great League. For that Pokemon within the Great League. We take all of that data, and this is a little technique called symbolic regression. So essentially, I'm going to be constructing a mathematical function and trying to get that closer by adding different things to it through genetic programming, which essentially just mutates the function until it gets closer to what we have. And so the function that it outputs here is a pretty good loss actually compared to some of the early functions that it produces, and this is the best that I have found. This function here actually simplifies quite a bit. He had a 5 plus 5 there, which is kind of funny. But this is the same function in tree format, so this is kind of what it looks like internally to the program. And again, this is the fit that we gain here. And for comparison, this is one of the better ones that I found, which is attack minus defense. And so what do we learn about this function and this correlation here? Well, if we go back to what that function looks like, it depends on 3 variables actually. So I fed this algorithm a ton of different variables, but it only really wanted 3. And so what 3 were those? This is the fast move, damage per turn, attack, and defense. And this is divided by attack, so it's going to be pretty small. This is going to contribute only like 0 to 5.5. So a little bit here, but not a whole lot. A majority of the difference here, I think, is going to be made up of attack and defense stats. And so I think that to understand how the shadow bonus benefits Pokemon, it's very much a function of its attack and defense, and very minimally, but still very much involved is the fast move damage per turn, such as your Razor Leafers, which we see a little bit in both articles, like Blossom and Victory Bell. Razor Leafers. So yeah, that's kind of the methodology behind all of the statistics and data that we provided in this article. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Let me know what you think of these articles, what you'd like to see more of, and thanks for watching.